Hey, Cal, you're not going to believe who I ran into this week while I was flipping around the country doing a few interviews.
Oh no, who could it be?
Well, it was Tim David. Now,
All right.
what a nice guy he is. We've talked about him.
One of
And
our
the
favourites.
first thing he said to me when I met him was, "You do that show with Cal."
Well, there you go. He's a big fan of the show, is he?
Yeah, I'm clearly a big fan of the show. So your ears must have been burning on the other side of the world because we did chat about you.
Absolutely.
And I don't care what he says about you. I reckon you're a really good guy. So just remember that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good to know Tim David as a big fan of the show. We've got a lot to talk about today. So let's get on with it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Timed Out for Sporting News, especially if you're Tim David. I'm not sure who's watching this week. I'm sorry we missed an episode. Great to have Callum Ferguson with me, our show from on opposite sides of the world, keeping an eye on what's been happening. And really, it feels like there have been various series, but over here, I'm currently in Birmingham right at this second, Cal. There's a real buzz about Commonwealth Games in general.
So there should be.
We have some semi-finalists.
Yeah, we do. It's a couple of really big clashes too, aren't they? England women taking on India and the Australian women taking on New Zealand. I mean, big clashes, and it's going to be exciting viewing, no doubt about it. But I thought the result the other night, England battering New Zealand, was quite a stark result. That one, that really put a cat amongst the pigeons, I reckon, because New Zealand don't get beaten that soundly too often. So great form for the English. India they've been in great touch as well. It's going to be a red hot semi-final couple of days, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It really is, because I mean, when Australia played India in that opening game, Australia were on the ropes, and it really just was that depth in batting lineup that got them through. But so watching India play in this tournament, they've been super. What's happened for them is their opening partnership generally, between Shafali Verma and Smriti Mandana has been a great touch. That opening partnership has really been firing and has got them off to some great starts. And then the real emergence, I think, she's been fantastic. Renika Singh Thakur, she's been outstanding. Her swing bowling, it's just been really impressive. They've had a real buzz about them. You can just see them lifting, but then Australia having that ability to win from virtually any position. And India, well, they've got that match against England. Catherine Brunt is on a mission. She really looks it, and she was outstanding against India. But is it going to be that thing we've sort of seen? South Africa have been disappointing, and a couple of the other teams as well. We've ended up with 4 not surprising semi-finalists. Yeah. But is it going to just be Australia winning gold in the end again? Are they just going to go, it's almost boring, isn't it? Australia women just win everything.
Yeah, well, that's what I think is going to happen. I think the Australians will march their way to another win. I think, you'd look at the South African women and think they've been disappointing. It's always, I thought it was going to be a closer run race for the semis, but in the end, we got the teams that deserve to be there, which is just how you want it. The 4 best teams are there, and it's going to be red hot, these semi-finals. To be honest, as you mentioned, there's been some really closely fought contests. Australia looked done in the first game against India, found a way out, and that's part of the reason why I think they're going to win this tournament. Is simply the fact that they've got so many strings to their bow. Things don't have to go perfectly for them to still win games and win games comfortably, because there's match winners all the way through the list. So, I just think it's the depth of Australia that's going to see them win the gold medal. And look, I'm just really excited about these semi-finals. I think they're going to be close. They're going to be tight. But at the end of the day, I think the Australians will make their way through. I think India beat England, though. That's what I do think. I'm not sure where you sit on that one.
I think that's really, really hard to call, but they do look really, really good. The crowds have been fantastic, I want to point out as well. And when Catherine Brunt was on a roll against New Zealand, the Holly stand has never been like that for a women's game. It just hasn't. They don't usually get to play at Edgbaston. So that was fantastic. It was as if, Jimmy Anderson was bowling and they were going nuts. So that, to me, was great to see it. And maybe that might really lift England as well, having that strong local support. But there are also a lot of India fans at the games here as well. So yeah, I think that's a really tough one to call. But yeah, with Australia, I just look at Talia McGrath. She's again been covering herself in glory throughout this entire tour, and they've got to start getting her out. Her averages in white ball cricket are stupid now. They're just stupid.
What I love is that she's got the confidence to just take the game deep and not panic and know that, if she's there in the last couple of overs, they can get anything. And that's so true. And that's one thing that the best experienced short form players do consistently. The stark thing is that she's doing it at such a young age and so early in her career. The world's her oyster. She's going to go a long, long way in this game. She's going to be a household name for another decade. One thing I did want to point out was where England's cricket was at when they were touring Australia last summer to where it is now. I mean, you look at the World Cup, how well they performed there on the back of the trouncing they copped here in the Ashes, to now make it through to another semi-final and look like a team to beat. I think that you got to take your cap off. I think that they've done a remarkable job to bounce back after those Ashes, learn some lessons, and put themselves in another position to win a tournament. I think it's fantastic. Yeah,
they've got some promising young players as well. So that's been good, fresh talent coming in who perhaps not as scarred by that experience too. Speaking of the women's game, we did just want to touch on been a couple of odd things happening. Well, sad really, that we've seen in the past couple of weeks. Two players retired from international cricket in Deandra Dotton, who blasted the fastest century, still the fastest century in women's T20 internationals. It was for a while the fastest century for either men or women. And so she has put out a statement that suggested she was very unhappy within the West Indies camp, wants to keep playing, but doesn't want to play for West Indies. And Lizelle Lee, who essentially was kind of told that she wasn't fit enough, there were issues over her weight, was going to have to go back to South Africa, and in the end just decided to walk away from the game, and with injuries to Marizanne Kapp and then Lizelle Lee going as well, that there's some key reasons why South Africa have performed so badly, and they have performed badly on this tour. It's concerning, isn't it, Cal, just from the perspective that when you have so limited opportunities for these players compared to the men's game to actually perform, just at a time when it seems like that's got a lot better. There are obviously some unhappy times. Lizelle Lee said that she didn't feel at all supported by Cricket South Africa at all. She tried to work through various issues and also maintains she is, fit to fulfill her role inside. Have you sort of been keeping an eye on that? What have you made of that?
I have been, and there's some similar issues to what I probably saw with players around me when the professional era, full-time professional era, was in its infancy in Australian cricket. I think we started to see some players really struggle with that transition. And certainly, if you look around the women's game at the moment, the standard of not just skill but fitness level across international cricket and domestically in each country is rising at an extremely rapid race. I'd say even quicker than what it was in the men's game. And probably because they've got that standard to try and reach in front of them. They've got a bit of a roadmap there. So, rightly so, we're all trying to fast track that. But what it will do is it'll cause a few issues with some players that just aren't that interested in going to that next level of professionalism with preparation. Now, it's a bit cloudy as to what some of these issues were, particularly probably on the West Indies side of things. But, the fact that, there was a weight issue mentioned with regards to Lizelle Lee, and the fact that she's decided, I'd rather not. I'm going to be pretty comfortable moving into the T20 franchise sphere. That's 100% her decision, and she's got every right to make that call. Just like I think South African cricket's got every right to require certain standards of fitness for their players going forward. That's a changing, it's a moving sphere, and it's not going to be really easy for people to catch up to or move to, whereas others will just adapt really easily and move with the game. So, look, it's disappointing to lose someone of that standard and that nature, because she's an exciting cricketer. Certainly both ladies are, but I saw some good mates of mine, to an extent forego international cricket or the opportunity to, because they just didn't really want to take their professionalism to that level, and that's their decision. They've got every right to. What's disappointing is that Lizelle Lee has said that she doesn't feel like she was supported and communicated well enough to, and I think it seems like it's a pretty similar situation over in the West Indies, and I think that's the most disappointing thing. We want to see support for these players and guidance, and if they decide that they're not going to make that transition and take the professionalism to the next level, or whatever the issue might be, then that's their decision. But you'd like to think that the home boards will help them come to that decision, and it'll be an amicable separation. It's clearly not the case here, and that's, I think, what's really disappointing.
Yeah, and it's possibly worth pointing out too, the landscape is changing. I mean, everyone's hoping that in the new FTP, they're able to do what they can't do with the men's and create windows, that, because we saw last year in the WBBL, England and Pakistan were playing at the same time, so players had to pull out the WBBL. If there's a new IPL, all of that, if they can clear space, I think we may see players who aren't particularly happy go, right, well, you know what? If I can score a contract, so I've spoken to players, from other countries. I don't know if people at home realise this, but they get one WBBL contract, and that's more than they get paid for an entire year for their country. So, and the WBBL contracts are modest
because people are not just, it's obviously it's the height of your career to play and represent your country, but you've also at some point got to put yourself first and your family first, and whether you have children yet or not, or you're planning to in the future, financially you need to be able to take care of your family, and if they feel the need to make a decision around that, good luck to them, and fair play, and the fact that is the case, you can make more through one BBL tournament than you can in a year playing for your country. You hope that's not the case forever and a day, but right now that's the reality, and not everyone's aware of that, and it's a really important point to make.
Speaking of money and tournaments, we all know that this new tournament in the UAE, new T20 tournament, is part of a huge shift in cricket that we're seeing this year. It feels like, honestly, what's happening over the past few months is seismic in cricket. So news emerging this week, a story by Daniel Brettig in the Asian Sydney Morning Herald that come out that the teams will be able to field up to 9 foreign players in that UAE tournament, which is basically completely against what every other T20 tournament and the 100 has done. There's been a limit on foreign players.
That's right.
A very small limit on this. And as per Dan's reporting, the other boards, the member boards, are pretty unhappy about that now because it's obviously clashing with a couple of their tournaments. I don't know if they raised these issues. So apparently these issues were not raised when the tournament was first proposed because they're signed off on it. And then now that it's competing, so perhaps that's the level of self-interest there. But blimey,
it does.
It's big, isn't it? Because I can tell you what, Cal, you've got nine of the best players from around the world, 2 local players. That's going to be pretty. I'd watch it. I don't know about you.
I'll be finding a way to watch it, Mel. Don't worry. Look, that's going to make things really difficult from an eyes on screens point of view for BBL and the South African T20 League as well, because if you're competing with, a tournament that's putting those numbers up when it comes to talent from around the world, you're going to have a tough time drawing eyes away from that spectacle. It's going to be incredible. So I think, it's really thrown the cat amongst the pigeons. Clearly, there's been some administrators around the world that are now going, well, hang on, this is something we've really got to take seriously now, which to me is crazy that they've waited until now and that they haven't had the foresight to perhaps raise the issues. I think that they've just seen this all announced now and realised that the UAE League is fair dinkum, and now they're panicking. And unfortunately, we've seen that from Cricket Australia in recent years, in particular in the last 12 months, where they've realised that perhaps they are behind the 8 ball and perhaps they're not the second-rated T20 league in the world that they thought they were for so long. Now they've got a number of different leagues that are very quickly swamping them, and that's a real concern, particularly here in Australia. From my point of view, the BBL have got the draft coming up, but the fact of the matter is they're not going to have the showpiece T20 specialists playing in the league at the business end of the tournament. They're going to be relying on international Australian players to come back and fill the void, but there's a few that aren't all that keen from what I'm hearing. So they're going to be under the pump over the next 4 to 5 months in particular. Cricket Australia, there's no doubt about it.
Yes, of course, all those discussions about Dave Warner in particular, I believe they are sort of discussing things about that, and his those early reports saying that he was just going to go and play in that tournament, things might have softened somewhat there. But one of the things I've been hearing, Cal, is that there are players, when it comes to the draft, the downside is there are players who would be quite happy to play in have a couple of months in certain cities. I'm sure you'd put up a great advertisement for Adelaide. But might not be.
Absolutely, I'll find a way. Don't worry, there's plenty.
Might not be so keen to be based in other cities, and the draft has now taken that possibility away from them. So that's certainly something I'm hearing as well from those players. One coach I spoke to said,
"That's right. Australia used to be the destination tournament, didn't it? Yeah, everyone wanted to come and play the BBL because you get to spend a 6 to 8 week period in Australia. I mean, how great's that? But it's now sort of 10 to 12 weeks, 14 games, and you're getting paid far worse than you are pro rata in some of these other tournaments. It's not the destination tournament it once was. It makes a lot of sense what you're saying about the players, and we talked a little bit off air about wanting to have a bit more control over where they're spending that time. It is a lot of time. So it's not really a surprise. Maybe they see the replacement list a better option for them later on down the track, where they might have a bit more of a say. But it's a sorry state of affairs, I think, the draft finds itself in at the moment. I just keep thinking back to when they changed it from 10 to 14 games, how much that's really hurt the BBL at this stage.
It certainly has, but I don't think it's going away anywhere. We'll have to see. I'm going to be fascinated to see who ends up being platinum players in that draft. Who gets named as platinum players? That's going to be fascinating. Look, it's been nice to see some teams like Ireland and the Netherlands playing lately, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. Oh, look, it's exciting because, there is a lot of talent in both those countries, and they are playing. A lot of those players are playing in domestic leagues, whether it's around the world or just, not too far away in the UK. There's a lot of talent, so it has been exciting. They haven't necessarily been blown out of the water, particularly Ireland. I think Ireland have been quite competitive. The Netherlands have struggled at times, but it is good to see some cricket being played by the fully fledged test-playing nations with some of the lower-ranked countries, and it helps their development. There's no doubt about it. I think that it's going to be really important that we find the right balance going forward in the future tour plan. So, I think it's just a delicate balance. I think we need to make sure that the test-playing nations are still getting enough of a break so that we don't see weakened lineups playing in some of these games, because we want to see the best playing whenever possible. I still feel like there's probably too much T20 international cricket played, but I won't harp on that any further because I'll sound like a broken record.
Well, and the other thing with that too, and we've sort of mentioned it too, that I don't know how much people realise about the World Super League going in one-day cricket, because you'd often have these ODIs and T20s sort of played in a little series, but now that's gone, the requirements for countries like, where we see England playing the Netherlands in an ODI, we're seeing Australia playing Zimbabwe in some white ball matches in ODIs soon.
Yes, of course.
There will be no incentive for countries to do that unless they're being super magnanimous or want a bit of a warm up before a World Cup. There really isn't a lot of incentive for them to play ODIs against those countries because they don't get points for it. Doesn't help them with World Cup qualification. That's gone. So, and it's really strange that they brought it in and then they've got rid of it so quickly. It works brilliantly in the women's game, but again, I think it's part of that squeeze. So it's a bit disappointing for me that it's been hard in the past. Again, the schedule over here, all these white ball games have just gone like with the men's. It's been hard to keep track of them, but I would like to see it. It'd be great. I agree with you. Just want to see more opportunities. How those countries going to get better unless they get more games against that? And in the end, I just feel like sometimes, Carl, I don't know about you, I just feel like where cricket's racing along, more tournaments, it just feels like it's past time that the game took a step back and just went, right, where do we want cricket to be in 10 years' time? And how do we get there?
Well, I thought that period of time for reflection was probably during COVID. But I don't know whether it's really that time's been maximised or not. But I'm firmly of the belief that, look, I think T20 internationals should be scrapped, and that would free up some more time for some of the some ODI cricket to be played between the test-playing nations and the non-test playing nations to aid in development. Now, if someone was to say to me, look, we can't do that, but we can scrap international ODIs and play more T20 internationals and get some of these lower-ranked nations into the game more with the test-playing nations, I'd probably take it, because at the moment it's just an outrageous squeeze and we're not getting the balance anywhere near where it needs to be. So it needs to be one or the other.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I reckon, when you see the FTP and the old one where they had like the white spaces between the different games. The next one, there's not going to be a lot of white spaces. It's scary. That's going to happen soon. Yeah,
No, there's not.
We'll have a big chat about what that means for different countries and the game when that gets announced anytime now. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
But you know what? I'm going to enjoy watching these semi-finals over the weekend, Cal. I think it's going to be great. I hope you're going to be like have the coffee on and be up late, or going to watch highlights.
I will. Yeah, absolutely. I'll be staying up late for them. I'll be excited to see the Australian team march their way to another. Well, it's a gold medal this time. It's not a trophy, but it all counts.
It'll be exciting to see. Thanks, of course, for your thoughts as always, Cal. Thank you for watching. Please do give us a like and a share. Let us know what you think, and we'll hopefully be talking to you very soon. Until then, enjoy your cricket.